Hey everybody, and for today's scary story, I am going to talk about the Bunnyman Bridge. In 1903, there was an asylum built in the middle of the woods in Clifton, Virginia. Soon after the Civil War, people decided to inhabit the area, but they didn't really feel very comfortable living so close to an asylum, so they all kind of gathered, signed a petition for them to basically relocate, and it passed. When the petition passed, a new asylum was built, and it is called Lorton Prison, and it is basically a temporary facility for convicts to stay until they are appropriately sentenced. In 1904, they started gathering the convicts from one asylum to move to the new one by bus. However, during one particular transfer, in the middle of the drive, the driver swerved to miss something in the road or to avoid hitting something, causing him to lose control and actually tipped over. All of the convicts escaped from that bus and ran into the deep, deep woods. Immediately the next morning, a police investigation began, and days turned into weeks, turned into months, and eventually they captured all escaped convicts except for two. One was Marcus A. Walster, and the other was Douglas J. Griffin. During the investigation, they would find dead rabbits. All of them were half-eaten and dismembered. Eventually, they did find Marcus dead by the Fairfax Station Bridge, which is now known as the Bunnyman's Bridge. They found in his hands a man-made hammer knife tool. It was made with a sharp rock and a sturdy branch as the handle. They didn't really think much of it and didn't really care much. The only thing they cared about was that they found him and that he was no longer missing. They assumed that he was the one who had mutilated and partially eaten all of these rabbits that they had found. As they continued to search for Douglas, they kept finding dead, half-eaten rabbits every so often while they were searching. Months passed and they kind of just gave up on their search. Everybody just assumed that he was dead. But by that October, people started seeing and finding dead bunnies reappearing out of nowhere. Halloween night came, and as usual, a bunch of kids had gone over to the bridge that night to drink and do whatever kids do. Midnight came around and most of the kids had gone home, but only 3 of them remained at the bridge. At exactly midnight, a bright light came from the bridge right where the kids were. A few seconds later, they were all dead. Not only were their throats slashed, but they were cut up and down, their chests gutted like fish. Both of the boys were hung together on one side of the bridge, hanging from the overpass with their legs dangling in the view of the passing cars. The girl was then hung the same way, but on the opposite side of the bridge. This happened on Halloween in 1905. Another year passed. Halloween 1906 was approaching, and parents as well as teens in Clifton still remember the incident that had occurred 1 year ago at that bridge. By now, the bridge had already been given the name the Bunnyman Bridge. That night, 7 teens were actually hanging around at the bridge. However, one, Adrian Hatala, had remained a good distance from the bridge in hopes that they would have enough time to escape in case something did happen. She was the only one to witness what happened next. Just before midnight, a dim light was seen along the railroad tracks, and it stopped right above the bridge at midnight. At the same time the light disappeared, she heard screamings of terror coming from the inside of the bridge, and it only lasted for a few seconds. Moments later, they were all hung the exact same way like the year before from the bridge. She was completely mortified. She ran home. She refused to tell anyone what she saw. She just spattered words mixed with incoherent mumblings that the people of her town had put together to come up with her story. No one understood or believed her. They actually charged her with the murders and locked her up in the Asylum of Lorton. In 1913, the same thing happened with 9 teenagers this time, on Halloween night once again. Adrian was still locked up, and they ended up dropping her sentence. However, it was too late. She had gone completely insane. Even if she was released, she was too far gone to even have much of a life. So she actually spent her remaining years in the asylum until she finally died in 1953, but supposedly she had died in her sleep. More murders were to take place although after the murders in 1913, most people stayed clear of the bridge on Halloween. It is now 1943. 6 teenagers go and hang out at the bridge on Halloween night, and a couple hours later, all of them dead the exact same way as all of the others. Investigations took place, but as usual, nothing was discovered. In 1976, the same situation occurs, this time with only 3 people. The only other incident that occurred since then was in 1987. Janet Charletier was enjoying the night with 4 of her friends. Halloween night had finally come, and they had gone driving out to enjoy the night. They went and hung out at the bridge at around 11 p.m., waiting for midnight to come. They didn't actually believe the myth, so they were waiting around to experience it for themselves. It was near midnight, and Janet started to get a little scared. They had all been pulling pranks on each other, jumping out of the bushes and screaming, so she was already a little worked up. Midnight finally arrives, and she's a little bit in a panic. She decides to leave the bridge. She's about halfway out when this light turns on inside of the bridge. She finally manages to leave the bridge, but she ends up hitting a body and it knocks herself out. When she is awakened, she discovers that she has been bleeding. She was lucky that the cut had just started and wasn't very bad at all. She left and never returned to the bridge since. So most of the information that I have found was on Creepypasta. However, I did some more research to see what other sites say or have to say about this story. And so on this one, and this is urbanlegendsonline.com, and in this story they say that the trail that led into the deep woods, it led to a tunnel bridge crossing a wide creek, and there they found Marcus hanging from the tunnel entrance, which was that other escaped convict, that they found dead, that they thought were killing all the bunnies. There was a note attached to his foot: "You'll never find me, no matter how hard you try. Signed, the Bunnyman." The legend says that if you walk all the way down the tunnel at around midnight, the Bunnyman will grab you and hang you from the entrance of the bridge. There's another instance where there was a young man from Clifton, Virginia, who came upon the bridge while traveling. Later, he killed his parents and dragged their bodies into the woods to hang them from the bridge, and then killed himself. Then they say, in 1943, 3 teenagers, 2 men and a young woman, were at the Bunnyman Bridge for Halloween night. The 3 of them were found dead, hung from the bridge with their bodies slashed open, all with notes attached to their feet saying the same thing: "You'll never catch the Bunnyman." Also, in 2001, after hearing the tale, 6 local students and a guide searched the area. They found mutilated bunny parts during their search and left the forest after they heard noises and saw figures moving around in the woods. Oh, here is fairfaxcounty.gov. So this is the county where the Bunnyman Bridge is. So this is fairfaxcounty.gov/library/branches/VR/bunny. So if you want to look it up, you totally can. They say that the Bunnyman has been a fixture of local legend for at least 30 years. And by 1973, the so-called Bunnyman had been reported in Maryland and the District of Columbia. His infrequent and widespread appearances tended to occur in secluded locations and usually tell of a figure in a white bunny suit armed with an axe threatening children or vandalizing property. By the 1980s, Bunnyman had become an even more sinister figure with several gruesome murders to his credit. Although he has been reported as far south as Culpeper, Virginia, his main haunt has been the area surrounding a railroad overpass near Fairfax Station, the now infamous Bunnyman Bridge. Okay, so this is interesting. I'll just read it straight from here. I likely would have forgotten about the Bunnyman again if the questions didn't begin coming on a regular basis. Okay, so the Bunnyman has actually begun appearing in print in recent years, having been mentioned in several high school newspapers and more recently on the internet. The various internet versions have carried the story to new heights. The most widely circulated written version, entitled "The Clifton Bunnyman" and signed by Timothy C. Forbes, Virginia, was posted on a website called Castle of Spirits around 1999. This version of the tale is actually quite notable because of the number of specific facts given. Forbes claims that in 1904, inmates from an insane asylum escaped while being transferred to Lorton Prison. One of these escapees, Douglas J. Griffin, murdered the fellow escapee Marcus Walster and eventually became the Bunnyman. Not only is the location identified, but also the names of several victims and the dates of their murders. The story ends with a challenge for the reader to check with the Clifton Town Library for verification of the facts. Little effort was required to show that all of the specifics given in the Forbes version are false. First, there has never been an asylum for the insane in Fairfax County. Second, Lorton Prison didn't come into existence until 1910. And even then, it was an arm of the District of Columbia Corrections System, not Virginia's. Third, neither Griffin nor Walster appear in the court records of Fairfax County. Lastly, there is not and never has been a Clifton Town Library. The story also receives wide recognition after being featured on national television. The program, called Scariest Places on Earth, broadcast on the Fox Family Channel, included a segment entitled Terror on Bunnyman's Bridge. In 2001, broadcast season 3. At first I was content to dismiss the Bunnyman as completely fictitious. However, I have learned that many legends do have some basis in factual events. At the urging of a fellow employee, I finally began a more serious search for the Bunnyman. I began with a few basic assumptions. First, although the tale is told in jurisdictions all around the Washington, D.C. area, the bulk of them take place in Fairfax County. Second, any event that gains as much notoriety as this one must have been originally reported to the public. Third, the original event was probably criminal in nature. So the rest of this website actually gives a lot of history on other murders and stuff that took place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to this down below in the description so you guys can read all up on it, if that's cool, because it just gives so much information. It gives obituaries, I mean, all kinds of stuff. I hope you like this scary story. It's been one that's been widely requested from a lot of you guys, and so it's kind of a creepy one to check out. I watched a few YouTubers actually go there, like they filmed driving through the bridge and everything and all that stuff. Kind of creepy, kind of eerie. What do you think? Do you think there's a bunny man? Do you think there's a man? Maybe he's not dressed in a bunny suit. Maybe he's just insane in the woods and he kills bunnies and then kills people. I don't know. What do you think? I want to know what you think down below. Let's talk about the Bunnyman. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.